What happens when unlimited wealth collides with a father's rage? When honor becomes more important than law, and justice takes on a face that even hardened investigators would never expect? Tonight, I'm taking you inside the marble walls of Dubai's most guarded secret, a story so explosive that no newspaper dared print the truth. A story where a single phone call transformed one of the Gulf's most powerful men into something far more dangerous than any crime lord. Have you ever wondered what you'd do if someone hurt the person you love most? How far would you go to protect your family's honor? Would you trust the courts, or would you take matters into your own hands? Before we continue, if you're someone who believes in true justice, hit that like button right now. Because tonight's story will challenge everything you think you know about right and wrong. This is the story of Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour and his 19-year-old daughter Aliyah. When power meets violation, when wealth confronts helplessness, something explosive happens. And what this father did next didn't just shock the underground networks of Dubai's elite, it created a legend whispered in the darkest corners of power. But here's what makes this case truly haunting: the Sheikh's reaction wasn't what anyone expected. Not revenge. Not legal action. Something far more calculated. Something that would make his daughter's attacker wish he had never been born, while simultaneously trapping her in a new kind of prison. And if you think you can predict how this ends, think again. Because by the time you hear what Sheikh Rashid actually did, you'll question whether he was a hero, or something much darker. What happened that night in London would set off a chain reaction that reached from British elite circles all the way to the hidden desert estates of Abu Dhabi. And the price? Well, let's just say some victories cost more than defeats. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about crime and punishment, it's about the dangerous line between protection and control, between love and possession. If you're still here, drop a comment telling me, what would you do if it was your daughter? To understand the earthquake that was about to shake Dubai's elite circles, you need to understand Aliyah's world. Born into silk and marble, every corner of her existence was crafted from impossible wealth. Her childhood toys weren't just expensive, they were gilded in actual gold. European tutors filled her days with foreign languages and Western etiquette. From the outside, it looked perfect, the daughter of billionaire Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour, destined for influence and power. But perfection has a price. Behind those palatial gates, luxury came with chains. Every conversation monitored. Every friendship analyzed. Every dream filtered through the lens of family honor. At 19, Aliyah had never walked alone down a street. Never chosen her own clothes without approval. Never spoken to a man without a chaperone present. Dubai's towers glittered like jewels in the distance, each one a reminder of her father's empire. But for Aliyah, they might as well have been prison bars made of glass and gold. Sheikh Rashid believed he was protecting his daughter. In his world, women of prominent families faced constant threats, kidnapping, scandal, manipulation by those seeking access to power. His restrictions weren't cruelty, they were necessity. But protection and imprisonment can look identical from the inside. Quick question: are you finding this story as gripping as I am? Because it only gets more intense. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of these incredible cases. The Sheikh's business empire stretched across oil, real estate, and technology. His days were filled with boardrooms and diplomatic meetings. He commanded respect from world leaders and fear from competitors. Yet the one person whose respect mattered most, his daughter, remained a mystery to him. Aliyah learned to navigate her golden cage with quiet rebellion. She read forbidden books. She learned about the world through secret internet searches. She dreamed of a life beyond marble walls and family expectations. Her father saw her as precious, something to be protected, preserved, eventually gifted to a worthy husband who could expand their dynasty. But Aliyah saw herself as suffocating, counting down days until she could taste freedom. That freedom would come through her acceptance to a private arts academy in London. Her father agreed, believing distance would keep her safe from Dubai's temptations. Neither of them realized that sometimes the greatest dangers lurk in the places we least expect. London hit Aaliyah like a revelation. For the first time in her life, she could walk into a coffee shop without bodyguards. She could choose her classes, her schedule, even her lunch. The simple act of buying groceries felt revolutionary. The private arts academy attracted children of the global elite, diplomatic families, tech moguls, entertainment royalty. But unlike Dubai's suffocating social circles, London's elite youth carried a different energy. They were rebellious, experimental, hungry for experiences their wealth could buy. Aaliyah threw herself into this new world. She studied photography, finding power in capturing moments through her own lens. She made friends who knew her as just Aaliyah, not Sheikh Rashid's daughter. For months, she tasted what normal felt like. Her tutor, Catherine Doyle, became more than an educator. The Irish woman recognized something familiar in Aaliyah's eyes, the look of someone discovering themselves after years of being told who they should be. Catherine encouraged Aaliyah's independence, teaching her that her opinions mattered, that her voice deserved to be heard. But freedom attracts attention. And attention isn't always welcome. The invitation arrived on expensive paper, a private gala at the Belgravia residence of Ambassador Hassan al-Khoury, a prominent Middle Eastern diplomat. The event promised networking opportunities with influential families, cultural discussions, and sophisticated company. Aaliyah's classmates were excited. This wasn't just any party, this was access to the kind of power circles their parents navigated daily. For Aaliyah, it represented something more, proof that she could move in elite society as her own person, not just her father's shadow. She chose her outfit carefully, elegant but not flashy, sophisticated but age-appropriate. Pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. A dress that spoke of refinement without screaming wealth. The mansion glowed with warmth when she arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across Persian carpets. Conversations flowed in multiple languages, Arabic, English, French, Farsi. Aaliyah felt sophisticated, adult, ready to prove she belonged in this world. But here's what troubles me about this case, and tell me if you agree in the comments: sometimes the most dangerous predators hide behind the most respectable facades. They count on our trust, our naivety, our desire to belong. Among the distinguished guests was Khalid Darwish, the 28-year-old son of a wealthy oil magnate. Handsome in the way that wealth can polish a man, charismatic in conversations about art and culture, entitled in the subtle ways that come from never hearing no. Khalid carried himself with magnetic confidence. He commanded attention in group discussions, told stories that made people laugh, displayed knowledge about subjects from wine to world politics. Other guests gravitated toward him, drawn by his easy charm and obvious connections. When introductions were made, Khalid's smile seemed genuine. His handshake was firm but respectful. His questions about Aaliyah's studies showed apparent interest in her mind, not just her background or beauty. For a young woman tasting independence for the first time, Khalid represented everything exciting about this new world: sophistication, opportunity, adult conversation with someone who treated her as an equal. She had no way of knowing that behind his polished exterior lurked something monstrous. The gala started like a fairy tale. Conversation sparkled around topics Aaliyah had only read about: international politics, art exhibitions, cultural exchanges between East and West. She felt intelligent, valued, finally part of something meaningful. Khalid was attentive throughout the evening, but not overwhelming. He introduced her to other guests, included her in discussions, treated her with what seemed like genuine respect. When he offered to show her the ambassador's private art collection, it felt like a natural extension of their cultural conversations. The collection was stunning, pieces from across the Middle East and Europe, each with stories spanning centuries. Khalid's knowledge seemed impressive as he explained the historical context behind various works. Aaliyah found herself drawn into discussions about artistic techniques, cultural symbolism, the way art transcends political boundaries. But as the night progressed, the crowd grew louder. Laughter blurred into something less controlled. The sophisticated discussions she'd enjoyed earlier became harder to follow. Glasses refilled more frequently. The atmosphere shifted from refined to reckless. Aaliyah's memory after midnight became fractured. Fragments of scenes that didn't connect properly. Feeling dizzy despite having barely touched her wine. Finding herself in unfamiliar rooms. Khalid's voice changing from charming to commanding. Her own voice seeming to come from somewhere far away. What followed was devastating. I need to pause here because this is where our story takes its darkest turn. If you have someone in your life who's experienced trauma like this, you know how crucial it is that we talk about these realities. Hit subscribe if you believe survivors deserve to have their stories heard, even when those stories are uncomfortable. When Aaliyah regained full consciousness, she was alone in a guest bedroom, her elegant dress torn, her body aching in ways she didn't want to understand. The house had grown quiet. The laughter from downstairs had faded. Dawn light crept through unfamiliar curtains. She stumbled to the bathroom, seeing her reflection as if for the first time. Makeup smeared. Hair disheveled. Eyes that looked hollow, shocked, changed forever. The girl who had arrived full of confidence was gone. In her place stood someone who would forever remember this night as the moment her world split in two. Khalid was nowhere to be found. The house staff treated her politely but distantly, calling her a taxi without questions. No one asked if she was okay. No one seemed to notice that she could barely walk steadily. No one appeared to care that she had clearly been harmed. The ride back to her flat passed in a blur. She showered until the water ran cold, but couldn't wash away the shame, the confusion, the violation that had shattered her sense of safety. She wanted to disappear, to pretend the night had never happened, to return to her protected world where such horrors seemed impossible. But Catherine Doyle refused to let the truth disappear. The Irish tutor took one look at Aaliyah and knew something terrible had occurred. Despite Aaliyah's protests, Catherine insisted on medical attention. She documented everything, fearing that without evidence, the authorities would bury the case or dismiss it as privileged kids behaving badly. Catherine understood something Aaliyah didn't yet grasp: silence protects perpetrators, not victims. She also understood something that would soon shake Dubai's elite circles: she hadn't considered who Aaliyah's father was, or what he might do when he learned his daughter had been dishonored. The question that haunts this case, and I want you to comment below with your thoughts, is this: when justice systems fail, what becomes acceptable? Sheikh Rashid Al Mansour was in a board meeting when the call came through. His assistant knew never to interrupt unless the matter was urgent. When she whispered that Catherine Doyle was calling from London regarding Aaliyah, he excused himself immediately. The conversation lasted exactly 4 minutes. By the end, the man who commanded respect from world leaders and fear from competitors had transformed into something far more dangerous: a father who had just learned his daughter had been violated. For 30 years, Sheikh Rashid had built his empire on cold calculation. Every business decision was measured, analyzed, optimized for maximum impact with minimum risk. His reputation was built on being unreachable, unshakable, always 3 moves ahead of his opponents. But this wasn't business. This was personal. Catherine's report was thorough and devastating. Medical evidence confirmed what had happened. Her documentation included names, dates, locations, everything needed for a proper investigation. She had expected Sheikh Rashid to contact the British authorities, perhaps hire expensive lawyers, maybe leverage diplomatic channels to ensure justice. She hadn't expected the silence that followed. Here's what bothers me about cases like this, and you need to let me know in the comments if you've seen this pattern too: the wealthy and powerful often operate by different rules than the rest of us. Sometimes that means they escape consequences. Sometimes it means they create their own consequences. For 48 hours, Sheikh Rashid said nothing to anyone. He cancelled meetings, ignored calls from government officials, disappeared from the social circuit that usually demanded his presence. His staff whispered about his unusual behavior, but no one dared ask questions. During those 2 days, the Sheikh wasn't inactive. He was making different kinds of calls. Private investigators with backgrounds in MI6 found their phones ringing. Security consultants who specialized in discrete problem-solving received encrypted messages. Financial experts who understood how to move money without creating trails were contacted through intermediaries. Within 72 hours, a team of professionals had been assembled under the cover of business consultants for his London operations. Their official job was market research. Their actual mission was to map every detail of Khalid Darwish's life. Where he studied. Where he ate. Who he owed money to. What secrets he kept. Who he had hurt before. Because Sheikh Rashid suspected this wasn't Khalid's first crime. Men who assault young women at elite gatherings don't usually start with daughters of powerful families. They practice on victims who can't fight back, whose stories won't be believed, whose pain doesn't matter to anyone with influence. The Sheikh's rage wasn't just about his daughter's trauma, though that burned hottest in his chest. His fury was about the realization that while he had spent years protecting Aliyah from imagined threats, real predators had been hiding behind respectability and charm. Subscribe right now if you want to see how far a father's love can push him into darkness. The investigation into Khalid Darwish's life revealed a pattern that made Sheikh Rashid's blood freeze. This wasn't an isolated incident born from too much alcohol and poor judgment. This was the behavior of a calculating predator who had learned to use his family's wealth and status as hunting tools. The team of ex-MI6 investigators worked with the efficiency of a special operations unit. They tracked credit card records, analyzed social media patterns, interviewed former classmates and associates using carefully crafted cover stories. Within 2 weeks, they had constructed a detailed psychological profile that painted Khalid as a monster hiding behind aristocratic manners. 3 other young women, scattered across Europe and the Gulf, had whispered similar claims. A diplomat's daughter in Geneva who had been found unconscious at a ski resort party. A tech mogul's niece in Barcelona who had been discovered in a hotel room with no memory of how she got there. A banking family's daughter in Kuwait who had tried to file charges but been silenced by family pressure to avoid scandal. Each case followed the same pattern: elite social settings, charming initial interactions, memory gaps, and aftermath covered up by families more concerned with reputation than justice. Each victim had been young, wealthy, and ultimately powerless against systems designed to protect men like Khalid. This is the part of the story that makes my stomach turn, and if you're feeling the same way, smash that like button because we need to talk about how privilege becomes a weapon. How many of these cases do you think never get reported at all? Drop your thoughts below. But Sheikh Rashid wasn't interested in exposing a pattern or building a legal case. He was interested in something far more direct: making Khalid Darwish disappear from the world he had been poisoning. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. In early spring, Khalid received an invitation that triggered every weakness in his personality. A high-stakes poker event in Monaco, supposedly hosted by a consortium of Gulf businessmen. The guest list read like a directory of Middle Eastern power, oil ministers, tech moguls, diplomatic families, entertainment figures. The event promised everything Khalid craved: luxury, networking opportunities with influential families, the kind of exclusive access that came with serious money. The invitation mentioned private jets, 5-star accommodations, and poker games where the minimum buy-in was more than most people earned in a year. What Khalid couldn't know was that the entire event existed only in Sheikh Rashid's imagination and the professional skills of his hired team. Every detail was crafted to perfection. The invitation arrived on paper that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Phone calls from other attendees confirmed the event's legitimacy. Social media accounts for the organizing committee showed years of history hosting similar gatherings. The casino venue was real, an exclusive private club that could be rented for special events. The staff were legitimate professionals who had been hired for what they believed was a genuine high-stakes gaming night. Even the other guests were actual wealthy individuals who thought they were attending a legitimate social gathering. Only the host was fictional. Only the purpose was fabricated. Only Khalid was walking into a carefully constructed web. Can you imagine the level of planning this required? The attention to detail? The sheer audacity of creating an entire fake event just to lure one person? If you're as amazed by this level of calculated revenge as I am, make sure you subscribe because stories like this don't come along often. When Khalid arrived at the Monaco venue, intoxicated by the atmosphere of wealth and power, he was quickly identified by Sheikh Rashid's team. Security cameras recorded his entry, his movements through the gaming rooms, his interactions with other guests. But somehow, no camera captured his departure. Witnesses remembered him at the poker tables, boasting about recent business deals and hinting at romantic conquests. They recalled his laughter, his confident betting, his obvious enjoyment of the exclusive environment. But no one could remember seeing him leave. The last official record of Khalid Darwish as a free man was his signature on a cocktail receipt at 11:47 p.m. By dawn, he was in a private jet flying toward the desert estates of Abu Dhabi, unconscious and unaware that his life as he knew it was over. Sheikh Rashid hadn't just caught his prey, he had erased him from the civilized world entirely. What happened next would haunt everyone involved, including the Sheikh himself. But first, are you brave enough to hear what a father's love looks like when it turns into something darker? The compound in Abu Dhabi's desert existed off every official map. Built as a private retreat for the Sheikh's family, it sat surrounded by endless sand dunes, accessible only by private helicopter or specially equipped vehicles. No cell towers reached the location. No satellites paid attention to the buildings hidden among artificial oases. When Khalid regained consciousness, he was in a room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a prison cell. Egyptian cotton sheets, marble bathroom, air conditioning that kept the temperature perfect despite the desert heat outside. For a moment, he might have thought he was simply recovering from too much celebration in Monaco. Then he tried to leave and discovered the doors wouldn't open. Sheikh Rashid didn't visit immediately. For 3 days, Khalid was left alone with his growing panic, served meals by silent staff who refused to answer questions, provided books and entertainment but no communication with the outside world. The psychological pressure built methodically, designed to break down the arrogance that had protected him for so long. When the Sheikh finally appeared, he carried a thick folder and a digital tablet. He sat across from Khalid like a businessman conducting an interview, his voice calm and professional. Khalid Darwish, he said, opening the folder. 28 years old. Son of Hassan Darwish, oil executive. Graduate of Cambridge, failed attempts at multiple business ventures, currently living off family money while pursuing what you call opportunities in London's social scene. Khalid demanded to know why he was being held, threatened legal action, name-dropped influential family connections. Sheikh Rashid listened patiently, then activated the tablet. This is where the story becomes almost impossible to believe, but sometimes reality surpasses fiction in its cruelty. If you think you can handle what comes next, hit that subscribe button. If you can't, well, maybe it's time to face some uncomfortable truths about what justice really means. The tablet contained everything. Police reports that had been filed and then mysteriously withdrawn. Medical records from victims who had been silenced. Voice recordings from young women describing assaults that matched exactly what had happened to Aaliyah. Bank records showing payments made to families in exchange for silence, but most devastating of all, video footage from security cameras at the London Gala, showing Khalid leading Aaliyah away from public areas while she was clearly incapacitated. Sheikh Rashid made Khalid watch every piece of evidence. He forced him to listen to testimony from women whose names Khalid had probably forgotten, whose pain he had dismissed as irrelevant. The tablet became a weapon, each swipe revealing another layer of systematic predation. My daughter, Sheikh Rashid said finally, was number 4 that we know of. How many others haven't come forward? The psychological dismantling was methodical. Sheikh Rashid didn't use physical violence, he didn't need to. He used something more effective, complete exposure of Khalid's true nature, reflected back at him through victim after victim whose lives he had damaged. Here's what keeps me awake at night about this case, and I want your honest opinion in the comments. When legal systems fail victims, when wealth and status protect predators, what becomes acceptable? Where is the line between justice and revenge? After 7 days, Sheikh Rashid presented Khalid with an ultimatum: confess everything. Sign documents admitting to every assault. Record video statements acknowledging your guilt. Do this, and you live. Refuse, and your family discovers what kind of monster you really are, along with evidence that will destroy them financially, socially, and legally. The confession took 3 days to complete. Every detail documented. Every victim named. Every assault described in Khalid's own words. The videos were shot professionally, ensuring they could never be dismissed as coerced or fabricated. But Sheikh Rashid wasn't finished. The confession was never intended for courts or police. It was insurance, proof that would prevent Khalid from ever claiming innocence or victimhood. The real punishment was just beginning. Khalid Darwish didn't die in that desert compound. What happened was far more sophisticated than murder. It was complete erasure from the life he had known. Sheikh Rashid's final punishment was exile disguised as freedom. Khalid was released with a new identity, financial accounts that appeared substantial but were programmed to drain systematically, and silent watchmen who would ensure he never returned to elite circles. The oil executive's son found himself cut off from family money through manufactured business disasters. His social connections evaporated as rumors spread about gambling debts and mental instability. Every attempt to rebuild his reputation met mysterious obstacles: job offers withdrawn, business partnerships dissolved, social invitations mysteriously rescinded. Within 6 months, Khalid had vanished into the shadows of Eastern Europe, a broken man living in obscurity, watched constantly but never directly confronted. Sheikh Rashid had created something worse than death, a lifetime of looking over his shoulder, knowing that his past could surface at any moment, but victory came with an unexpected price. This is the part that breaks my heart, and if it affects you the same way, please subscribe because we need to discuss how trauma impacts everyone differently. While Sheikh Rashid believed he had restored his family's honor, Aliyah felt differently. Her father's elaborate revenge didn't heal her trauma, it amplified her sense of being controlled. The silence imposed by family secrecy meant she could never speak openly about her experience, never claim agency over her own story. At 21, she made a choice that shocked Dubai's elite circles: she disappeared. Rumors spread about her escape to Canada under an assumed name. Some claimed she studied psychology, driven to help other survivors reclaim their voices. Others whispered about a quiet marriage to someone completely outside her family's world. One fact remained certain: Aliyah never returned to her father's palace. The sheikh had destroyed his daughter's attacker, but in doing so, he had also lost his daughter. His pursuit of honor had become another form of control, proving that sometimes even love can imprison. Final question: in seeking justice for those we love, how do we avoid becoming the very thing we're fighting against? How do we avoid becoming the very thing we're fighting against? Let me know your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge everything we think we know about right and wrong.